Religion is the handmaiden of authoritarianism. It's a heavy quote, huh? You know who shared that nugget of wisdom with me? The Reverend Paul Raushenbush. And he, as the president and CEO of the Interfaith Alliance, joined me to be able to talk about how we can effectively use religion as a powerful tool in democracy's toolkit. He joined me to be able to talk about how the weaponization of religion, albeit not something new though, is something that we are now building a huge tent as coalition partners to be able to fight back against. And he also shares some humor about how we're in this together. And it's such a great conversation. I urge you to stick through it and listen to all of it because it's worth your while. And joining me now, I do have the privilege of being able to spend time with the president and the CEO of the Interfaith Alliance, the Reverend Paul Raushenbush. Reverend, you're an ordained Baptist minister. You've published several books. You're a frequent speaker and commentator. You also have a weekly podcast and radio show called The State of Belief. One thing that kind of tickled my fancy a little bit is the fact that you're the great grandson of the former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, which I thought was really cool, just to have, anecdotally. But you're also married as well, and you're raising growing is what I just said, like they're plants. Raising two children. So you wear a lot of different hats, but the one that I really wanted to kind of lean into today with you was your role in bringing people connected and together and acting as a coalition partner as we face, I think, one of the biggest existential threats to not only ourselves as Americans, but to democracy at this time.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing moment for religion, I will say. And, I think it's important to remember that throughout American history, there have been religious people who have played and this is the not surprising one, very not great roles in our society, where they have supported slavery. They have restricted the rights of women. They have, enforced, great wealth disparities. Religious people give an excuse and sanctimonious sanction to some of the worst angels that we have. So that is, I think, well-established history. And yet, other history is also true, which is there have been religious leaders and religious people of all backgrounds and just citizens, people there who out of their religious conviction have stepped forward, shown up, spoken out and said, no, we want to move forward as a society. And so at every great moment of decision in American history, religious folks have been a part of moving that forward. We are seeing that now. I am very excited about the religious energy that is working in tandem with other democracy activists saying this is not going to stand and we are going to bring all the power of religion to bear on this movement in a positive way. And it's just giving me such hope. And Katie, I'm glad that you're seeing it too.
Yeah. And even Pope Leo actually spoke and said that people are being, quote, deeply affected by Trump's immigration policies. And he actually warned Christians and said every Christian will be judged by how they welcomed, quote, the foreigner. Now, listen, it's no secret that Pope Leo is from Chicago. Chicago has become ground zero, I think, for some of the deepest and greatest atrocities that are being perpetrated right now in an American city. But to have the Pope speak out in this way, and it really was pretty explicit, I think just goes to show how dire the situation has become when it's being perceived by religious leaders.
Well, it's very interesting that, this administration, let's just say, talks a lot about religious freedom. They like to, proclaim religious freedom. Yet out of the gate, J.D. Vance attacked the Catholic bishops for their immigration policy, saying they're padding their bottom line. Now, he's a Catholic, supposedly, but he's more Catholic than the Pope, according to him, because then Pope Francis at the time said, no, this is what we do. And now you have, it's not just Pope Leo, who I think he's not a radical activist in any way. For him to start speaking means that he sees this as an important inflection point. But what we are also saying is bishops and priests in the Catholic Church going to ICE facilities saying we want to serve communion, and being turned away. This administration has been the most hostile to religion that we have seen in generations. As much as they're going to try to say, oh, we're the religious freedom people, we're the religion of God people. And Trump likes to say, if you're against me, you're against God. There is no way that that's backed up in fact. And it's not just the Catholic Church. We are seeing rabbis, imams, people of all different backgrounds. There have been, I know personally, a Baptist minister who was shot with a pepper spray ball in Chicago. And there are images of that out there. Religious leaders are showing up. And what we're seeing is callous disregard for the religious voice. And that's, I think it's actually like a weakness of this administration that is just beginning to be fully understood. That they have such a tight ball of Christian nationalist followers and MAGA Christians that are around them, but they do not represent the broad religious voice in America. Name one like MAGA religious leader who's inspired anything over the last 10 months or however long this has been going on. You can't name one. And yet on the other side, there are wonderful leaders out there. And so I think what we're seeing is a resurgence of a religious expression of protests and also of peace. You know, we were, as you know, Katie, I was very involved in the No Kings doing faith outreach. And we were encouraging religious leaders to show up, be peaceful presence, but also a protest. The most peaceful, 7 million strong at least of religious leaders. I keep on saying religious leaders, and that's wrong. It's just everybody. It's not, it's just people who out of their spiritual convictions are showing up. It's not just clergy, but it's everyone. And so what we're seeing is just an incredible resurgence of kind of the civil rights moment of saying we need to bring all the power and the discipline and the vision of religious leadership to this moment. And we're seeing it played out.
Well, you know, the weaponization of religion is nothing new. It's been going on for centuries. It's been used to justify the total eradication of people across the globe. And in this instance, the exploitation of religion by the far right. You mentioned the white Christian nationalists. We now have a law in Texas with the 10 Commandments on every wall in the public school. You know, I was baptized Methodist. My church is a congregational church. I have no opposition to religion. I have no opposition to, you know, the idea of the 10 Commandments. But I do think in an interesting way, you know, I'm still a believer of the separation of church and state. But in this particular instance, we do need to infuse religion and the real tenets of Christianity and other religions and the way that we are fighting back, because the Republicans stand against things. They want to tear things down. And I think we need to send a message as Democrats that we are standing for things, that we are infusing our policies, our messaging, our campaign pillars with this idea of true Christianity.
True Christianity and truth of all the different faith traditions. True. What is glorious about America? And actually the best thing that we did at our founding was have a non-establishment clause and free exercise clause in tandem with one another. And so this brilliant thing that we did was say, we're not going to establish a religion and we're going to let all religions flourish. And it's proven true. We are one of the most religiously diverse and religiously vibrant countries in the world because we don't have an established religion. This effort, you mentioned the putting of the 10 Commandments in schools. Now, I want to say as a Baptist minister and as a person who has 2 children in public schools, I think that's a crazy thing to do. I mean, I think it's crazy for religious people to want that. Why would you outsource the teaching of religion to the public school? I actually think everyone should learn about religion in school. You can still, they keep on saying, oh, we're going to let people pray in school. You can already pray in school. What we don't want is one prayer that gets to control all the other groups. What we don't want is one religion to say, this is the religion, and everything else is made here by us allowing them to have this religion. George Washington specifically addressed this in a letter to the Hebrew congregations in the founding of our country, saying we will no longer speak of toleration of other religions. Everyone is equal. These are our founding members of our society who were like, we don't want anyone to be elevated above anyone else. And putting the 10 Commandments in there is a ploy. It's an effort to say, this is what really matters. And for those children whose parents are from different religious traditions, or whose parents are humanists or secular, they shouldn't have to be there. And I'll just say one other thing. If you wanted a teacher to start looking at the 10 Commandments and say, let's do an exercise today with the 10 Commandments, how many of those commandments would you say our current president has broken? Okay, you want the 10 Commandments out there? Let's go. So there's so many reasons. And this is just one of the attacks that's going on, on our schools. Yesterday, Interfaith Alliance launched a new campaign with the American Library Association called Faith for Libraries, because the libraries are getting attacked by one man, generally men, with a Bible saying, I'm going to tell everyone else what has to come off the shelves. I'm going to censor all of these titles because I'm going to tell you what stories matter, and it's just going to be my stories. So we're not going to have Black stories. We're not going to have LGBTQ stories. We're not going to have Jewish stories. We're not going to have Muslim stories, because those are also taken off the shelves. What we want to say to everyone, and I encourage everyone listening to this broadcast, is like, care for your local library, your local librarian, because they are being attacked by people using religion and it's a terrible thing. So we are asking religious folks to get, I'm sorry, the sun just blessed this project. To show up for the local librarian, make common cause and protect them, because they're getting doxxed. They're getting accused of all sorts of terrible things. These are librarians who are sharing the stories. It's a sacred vocation. So, 10 Commandments in schools, libraries getting attacked. There's just all sorts of ways that Christian nationalism is showing up right now, and religion can show up even which is diverse and welcoming and powerful, could show up even better. And that's the goal right now at Interfaith Alliance, and so many other people like yourself who are supporting.
Well, pun fully intended, you are preaching to the choir here, because I just had Kim Snyder, the director of the fantastic documentary film, The Librarians, on my show just a few weeks ago to talk about the film and to talk about why it is so important to provide support for our librarians, who we would think would be the least to be under attack, but they are literally physical threats, etc., threats of criminal prosecution. But Paul, or Reverend, it also speaks to the fact that we've seen jarring images graphically of attacks on, Pastor David Black, for example, who had to file suit in Chicago. The Reverend Jorge Bautista, who you speak of, being, shot in the face with a pepper ball. I mean, we've had rabbis, imams, people that are there in capacities to bring love and respect and to teach about tolerance and patience and all of the amazing tenets of these religions. And they're literally being arrested and violently assaulted by federal agents. Paul, I don't like to see it, but in some way, those images are powerfully effective, because I think that they are moving the needle in ways that, I could not, just sitting here railing against the system.
Well, you are so effective, and I really let me just say how much I appreciate your voice and how much, intelligence and nuance you bring to every conversation. Those images are really important. But we are actually in working with Democracy Forward, we're part of a lawsuit that's actually going to the Supreme Court, which is that these exercises are actual religious freedom exercises.
Yes.
It's not just freedom of assembly. It's not just freedom of expression. It is freedom of religion. These people, everyone, from the Pope Leo to the minister going to ICE, is showing up, exercising their religious freedom, which has to be respected in this country. And again, we have an administration that has created an anti-Christian bias task force. I don't know if you've heard about this.
Yep. Pamela Joe is another one of my favorite things to rail against. Pamela Joe, but go on.
That, and so we had to actually sue the administration to find out how this is being exercised, because basically what they mean by that is anyone who disagrees with us and what we're doing, that has become called now as anti-Christian bias. They have a Religious Freedom Commission, which is 13 of the most conservative Christians you can imagine, one Orthodox Jew, and that's supposed to represent religious freedom in America. We have but what religious freedom actually is people showing up out of their religious conviction, out of their deepest belief in God or belief in the tenets of their faith, and showing up and saying, here I stand. And we should be applauding that. And this government, frankly, with all the talk of religious freedom, should be applauding that. And what we see is pepper spray. And the powerful thing about that story with Reverend Black was, he was praying. He was praying, and they shot him while praying, and they said, I heard them laugh. And I think that we have to really understand what we're dealing with here, which is a use of religion, that they want to use religion in a way that just shuts down everything. Religion is often the handmaiden of authoritarianism. I'm sorry for that sexist metaphor, but it's the one that gives them
very fitting.
Gives them lead, gives them legitimization, allows them to do terrible things because they have religious sanction. But religion is also one of the most threatening things to authoritarianism, because we have networks. We meet regularly to talk about truth and to talk about what matters. We also have a vision. And, I'm sure Maria Stepan, all these amazing people are doing great work in anti-authoritarianism. They talk about religion having a vision for the future. That in the moments, that we have a vision that this current reality that we're in is not the only reality. We have a vision of the beloved community, as Dr. King said, playing on this idea, the kingdom of God on earth as in heaven, that has moved throughout the 20th century and tried to make us come closer to what Jesus was talking about in his time. And we want to bring that into fruition in our world. And we have that vision, and it's not going to be quelled by derision or by effort of suppressing our viewpoints. We are going to persevere, and I believe we're going to win. I really do. And I think by win, I mean win for everyone, win for creative society, a democracy that really works for everyone. And so we have to hold on to that vision.
I wanted to quickly ask you, Reverend, about candidates like James Tallarico, of whom I am a huge fan in Texas. He is a man who is so comfortable with his faith, and he has definitely used it. I think, I can be very Machiavellian about things, but he's used it in a very effective way for campaigning, and he's leaning into it heavily right now. His Christianity, his faith, to be able to show that you can be religious. And you can be a white man, and you can believe in Christ, but you're not going to weaponize it in a way that we've seen Republicans doing. Your thoughts about candidates that are doing this? Because I do think it's one way to show the electorate that religion isn't a bad word these days, that it really is something that can be a weapon for good, a tool for good.
Well, I shameless plug, but I had James Tallarico on this State of Belief, a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago. And I had a moment with another representative who was Muslim, because they were talking about how they were working together to make sure, because his Muslim colleague, they wanted to have a place to pray also in the State House. And his Muslim colleague was experiencing the Christian nationalism that, of course, is very prominent in Texas. And so what I love about James Tallarico is not just the way he's comfortable talking about his own faith, but how his own faith inspires him to understand people of other faiths and recognize them as full and equal partners in the project that is America. That's what's so important about James Tallarico. And not just James Tallarico. I think there are so many examples of wonderful. I mean, look at Raphael Warnock, and he is actually, you're someone I went to seminary with, but there are so many wonderful examples of Jamie Maskin from the Jewish community. These are people who are deeply understand their own background and come out of that background and are proud of that background, and they're lending it to the American project and say, my religious convictions had something to say about the American project. But I had back in the day when I was a journalist, I had a chance to interview President Jimmy Carter a few times, and he told me about this because he was a very committed, probably the most pious president of the 20th century.
True.
He told me about I would not invite Reverend Graham, Billy Graham, who was an important religious figure. He said, I would never invite him to the White House because I did not want to be seen as someone who was creating or endorsing one faith tradition over any other. And this is someone who actually knew Billy Graham, admired him, both evangelicals, and yet said, I don't want that for the way that people perceive how I understand religion and how I'm going to exercise my own religion over and against other religions. That's a great example of the kind of separation of church and state that does not silence anyone, but recognizes that we need to be aware of how things are perceived, and we're not going to use the levers of government in order to impose one moral idea or one religious idea or one religion over all others. And this is really important as we look right now, as people are using the levers of government. Look at Ron DeSantis, look at Abbott. These are folks who are just using government to decide, okay, this is what we don't want. And then the irony of them saying, and we're going to pass a law, this which is happening now in Florida, saying we're going to pass a law against Sharia because of Mandavi. It's like, dude, Sharia is not ever going to be in. You don't even understand what Sharia is. And it's definitely like you're using this as a foil while you're trying to impose your own Christian nationalism on the rest of the population, suppressing LGBTQ people, suppressing Black history, suppressing all sorts of other traditions, using religion as your rationale. So I think we have great examples of politicians. You mentioned Tallarico, but I just want to expand it. Just so many, the opportunity right now. And I'm always like, as I said to, people showing up for No Kings, wear your religion on your sleeve. It's fine. Show up. Let's all be fully who we are. We don't have to erase parts of ourselves to be part of this democracy. I think it's just really important that we state that clearly, but no one should be able to say, this is the way to be religious in America. This is the way you should pray or love or be in America. We should be free. And that should include, frankly, I'm always quick to say this because, people write me off as a commie or whatever. Like the old, I'm too liberal or whatever. My future actually includes conservative Christians. My future, the future I envision allows really conservative Christians to live their life as they feel they want to.
Yes, the liberty to do it.
Everybody should be able to do that. We're not trying to erase Christianity or even erase very conservative Christians from the public square. We want them to live. They just don't get to dictate to the rest of us what Christianity is or what being American is. And that, I think, is something, can we all agree on that? That what is great about America is that we can all be who we are and allow other people to be who they are and still go to school together and learn from one another. And that's, we're at a public school in New York City, very diverse economically, racially, and with religious traditions. I love the fact that my kids are learning about Diwali and are learning about Eid and are worrying about, Passover, and that there's, I want that. And can we all just agree that that's a good thing and that we can do that together?
I will say that James Tallarico was one of the most effective opponents to the Ten Commandments bill because of his religious background. I mean, he's been to seminary school and everything, but I mean, he just so thoughtfully was able to dismantle the hypocrisy that they were using foundationally to be able to justify that bill and others on the religious right in such a conservative place like Texas. I will share with you, Paul, before you and I part ways, a personal anecdote that I've shared with my viewers here as well as publicly. My mom is 82 years old and a staunch conservative who voted for Donald Trump, but voted for Kamala Harris in November of 2024. But just a few days before No King's Day 2.0, she dropped the bomb on me that she was going to be protesting in Miami with me. But I had no idea, but it had been organized through her church. She is also a member of the Coral Gables Congregational Church, of which I am a member. It's led by the incredible Reverend Lori Hafner, who deserves the shout out among many. But the church, this is a congregational church down in Miami.
Yeah. I know that church. That's wonderful.
And the reason why I love sharing the story with you and others is this church literally has opened its doors to any and all. So for somebody like my mom and others that are perhaps in the older, more conservative kind of crowd, she sees gay couples and married with children, and she sees, interracial couples. And we all do when we're a part of a church that is literally opened its doors to any and all. And I loved that she felt the safety and the comfort to go to her very first protest and demonstration of her entire life, being on this earth for 82 years, because the church organized it and gave her the little bus to get on and put her there in downtown Miami. And they walked together, and my mom carried a sign that said, "America, you in danger, girl." I mean, that is my 82-year-old little mom doing this. And the reason why I share this is church and religion can be the best gateway drug for change. It can be the one thing that, as a conservative, quote unquote, is comfortable enough to allow the entry point of being able to see this viewpoint, which is truly reflective of how we're supposed to be, to your eloquence about the type of America we want to be in. And so I wanted to share that with you because I feel like it gives us hope, right? To see that we can move mountains one by one, and church and religion is a way to do it. It doesn't have to be a weapon of hate. It doesn't have to be something that's destructive. It can be something, again, that's the best gateway drug to be able to.
I love that. And I do think it's really important for your viewers who might not be so accustomed to hearing about this. The majority of religious people in America and Christians in America, something like 66% and maybe higher, support LGBTQ equality. Yeah. Sometimes LGBTQ activists aren't even aware that religion can be a major ally. Same with issues of abortion, same with issues around censorship. Religious communities actually have something to offer. The broad movement to continue to move our democracy forward. It's really important. And that's what is going back to the library work. Go look, one of the things you just didn't say, the librarians, make friends with the good religious folks in your community. So when the pastor comes in and says, "I'm taking these books off because God tells me," say, "Okay, well, actually God told these 10 people not to do that." This is the idea behind Interfaith Alliance, frankly. We were founded 30 years ago as a response to the Christian Coalition, Cap Robertson, Jerry Falwell, who were saying, we are the religious folks in America. We get to tell people what to do. And this group of liberal, mainline Protestants, Jews, Catholics said, no, not so fast. You don't represent our viewpoint. And so this is so important now, even more so. And I love that story about your mother. I think it's so inspiring. And frankly, it was my gateway drug. I started going to church because my mother, who was an activist in contraception in the 70s in Wisconsin, made us go to church. That was part of what church was. That was where my father, who was a law professor, said, we spoke to the congregation about the evils of redlining and the restrictions against Black and Jewish Wisconsinites and took on the real estate. But he gave that lecture at church. This is, so I just think I so appreciate you framing this in the way that you've allowed me to speak, is that we can, without that, I'm a gay man. I with a family, I know I'm a target, but church can also be the thing that saves us. And so I just I'm not like, it's not like rah religion. Everybody has to be religious. I'm not saying that. Actually, many people in my clothing, many of the closest people in my friend group are not religious. What we are saying, I think I hear you saying as well, is there are so many great religious folks out there. Don't leave them on the table. That's amazing
100%.
energy. And
100%.
we need all of us in this moment.
So, Reverend Paul Raushenbush, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the Interfaith Alliance and all the important work that you're doing and showing us that religion is just another tool, an incredibly powerful toolkit for American democracy. Thanks for being here.
Great to be talking.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.